Okay, it's time to put the cam gears back on. So, process is pretty simple. I've cleaned up the area around where the cam seal went. And I'm just going to place the woodruff key into its slot. Remember, we were careful not to leave that and lose that. I've cleaned up the pulley, so you line it up with the key. And it'll go on. And then the bolt goes on. Remember, the washer is tapered. It tapers inward. So the bigger part of the washer goes to the outside, the bolt end. And the inside, the narrower side, touches the cam gear. Just thread that on, finger tight. Good. 12mm socket, and we have to use a torque wrench for this. So if you look at the camshaft, which is exposed, you'll notice that there's one segment of each camshaft that has a hexagonal section. So just mount a wrench on that hexagonal section, and then you'll be able to hold the camshaft in place while you tighten it. Torque wrench goes on. 27 foot-pounds. Right there. That's all it takes. So we do the same for the intake side. So believe it or not, after all this work, we're actually ready to put the timing belt back on. But before we do that, it's absolutely essential that we ensure that the engine is at top dead center. This is really a crucial step, and you need to be precise about it, because getting this part wrong, and if your valves and your camshafts, which drive the valves, are out of sync with the crankshaft, which drives the pistons, then you can run into a case where the timing's out bad enough that the valves and the pistons would collide, because this is an interference engine, and that could result in permanent damage to your engine. So it's not hard to do, but we just got to make sure that we're precise. The good thing is that we set everything at top dead center when we were taking everything apart, so the engine shouldn't have moved very much since then, but we want to double check that it's still where it needs to be. First thing to do is to use the window and just make sure that that white cross mark is still lined up with the metal pointer in the observation window where the transmission bell housing meets the block. If it's off a little bit, then you can turn it. Quite often you can turn it just by using a flathead screwdriver and just pushing on the cogs that are on the flywheel, which is where the white cross is. Or you can even probably reach your finger in there and just turn it. It doesn't take that much force to spin it one way or another. Just zero it in right where it needs to be. The other thing that you need to do is make sure that your camshafts are both aligned where they need to be. So the first thing is to make sure that the up mark, which is on one of the spokes of the camshaft gear, is pointed directly perpendicular to the deck of the head. Then, more precisely, you need to look for the notches. There's notches on the back side of the cam gear. There's one in the center of the screen right now. And there's 2 notches on each cam gear, and they're on the front of the cam gear and on the rear of the cam gear. Those should line up exactly with the deck of the head. When you've zeroed it in like that, then we know that everything is exactly top dead center for the number 1 piston, and we can put the timing belt on. Remember, we had those pins locking the camshaft in place, but they still allow for a few degrees of rotation, so I've used the hexagonal section with a wrench to just zero it in right where it needs to be. And I can look at all 4 of those notches and verify that yes indeed they are lined up exactly with the deck. Just show these ones here. So we know that this engine is ready to have the timing belt installed. Alright, so finally we can put our timing belt on. So I have a timing belt, a new one from Honda. Part number is 14400PK3-004, and obviously I'm putting this on with clean hands. We don't want to get the new belt dirty. If we can avoid any contact with oil and things like that, that's desirable because it degrades the belt. The strategy, everything's in place for it to go on. We just need to carefully thread it in and try to get it looped around all the places it needs to without getting it dirty and without disturbing the alignment that we've done on the cam gears in particular, and also the crank. The crank's unlikely to turn when you're putting the belt on, but certainly worth checking it as you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just feeding it down this gap here, and then I'll swing it, get some good length in there so that you can get around just about to the point where it'll go down and over the cog on the crankshaft, and then I'm going to just slip it past the engine mount. So then I'll just go below and loop it over the tensioner and over the main cog. Then around the water pump. Around the intake can. Okay, so there the belt's on. The procedure that I used was to start with the main cog after lowering the belt into the gap here, loop it over the cog on the crankshaft, then over the tension in the water pump, then over the intake cam gear, and then finally, and it'll be tight, loop it over the exhaust cam gear. One thing that you can do to help kind of get things in place is that if you take out your alignment pins out of your camshaft, if you put them in, again you don't have to have those to do this, then it'll give you a couple degrees of rotation that you can put a wrench on the camshaft and just turn it a little bit each way, just so that you can match the cam gear up with the cogs in the belt. It's not the easiest thing to do to get it on, but just go slowly and be delicate with the belt as you go. And you'll see that once it seats in, it all kind of makes sense. Everything is meant to align so that the belt is good and tight over the entire thing, and your alignment of the cam shafts and the top dead center of the crankshaft is all set. So I'll just show you here. If I just push here, you can see there's very little deflection when I put force on these belts. So when it's in, it fits pretty tight because that tensioner will load it up. And it's really pretty much exactly the size that it needs to be anyway. Coming around here, what you're looking for is you're looking for those notch marks. I'm not sure you can see them. The one on the exhaust cam is visible there, and then if I go a bit over, you can just see the one in the intake cam. And also you'll notice that the up marks are both pointed directly perpendicular to the deck of the head. And then if we go back to our hole, we can see in the observation hole that the top dead center mark is still aligned with the pointer. The belt is on. It's over the main pulley at the bottom, or sorry, the main gear at the bottom, and it's over the tensioner and it's around the water pump. So this engine is ready to go, and we can proceed with tension adjustment.